strong and unwavering. Meanwhile, Jim Matthews says he and his family will keep hanging on to the hope that Janelle is alive and will one day be found. We'll keep hanging on, he says, and will not give up.
Months passed since Janelle disappeared, and in March of 1985, President Ronald Reagan decided it was time to speak out regarding the astonishing disappearances of children all over the country. Understanding the importance of the media, President Reagan pleaded with journalists across the country to help aid investigators in locating missing children and bringing them home. During his speech, President Reagan even mentioned Janelle by name, stating,
"Well over 1 million American children disappear from their homes or neighborhoods every year, causing, as we can all understand, heartbreaking anguish. For example, I learned about Janelle Matthews of Greeley, Colorado, who would have celebrated a happy 13th birthday with her family just last month. But 5 days before Christmas, Janelle disappeared from her home."
Despite the efforts of the president and the media alike, Janelle's case went cold. There was a potential piece of evidence found in May of 1985 when a portion of a person's scalp was located on a farmer's land in Weld County. However, upon further investigation, the skin and hair attached to the scalp did not match Janelle's. After confirming that the remains did not belong to her daughter, Gloria stated, "I wasn't really prepared emotionally to look at the scalp, but it was a job that had to be done. I felt a great sense of relief when I realized it wasn't Janelle." And despite the Matthews' initial relief, it was clear that the investigation was once again stuck without any more leads. And it would remain that way for a very long time. 10 years had passed with no leads, no indication that Janelle was still alive, and no hope to locate her anytime soon. Nearly a decade after Janelle first went missing, Jim and Gloria finally had their daughter declared legally deceased. Despite the finality of declaring their daughter dead, Jim and Gloria longed for proper closure. They just wanted to understand what had happened to their bright little girl, whose smile lit up any room she entered. At the time, it seemed that the Matthews would never get answers to the heartbreaking questions they had been holding on to since 1984. Staying in Greeley proved to be far too painful for the Matthews family to bear over the years. Jim and Gloria eventually retired to Costa Rica, and Jennifer moved to Washington. And then, in July of 2019, nearly 35 years after Janelle disappeared without a trace, the entire case broke wide open. As construction workers prepared land in a rural area of Greeley, Colorado's southeastern side for an oil and gas pipeline dig, they came across something peculiar. The team of construction workers had been slowly but surely moving the earth around 4:50 p.m. on Tuesday, July 23rd, just a mere 15 miles southeast of Janelle's old home, when they shockingly came across a set of human remains. Upon further investigation and DNA testing, the buried remains were discovered to be those of 12-year-old Janelle Matthews, the girl whose disappearance had turned the town of Greeley upside down all those years before. Not only did the discovery of Janelle's remains allow for the Matthews family to come to terms with their daughter's disappearance, but it also allowed investigators to determine Janelle's cause of death. You see, despite the fact that her body had obviously decomposed in the 30 years since it had been buried, there was a very clear bullet hole in what remained of her skull. As the investigation finally began, Janelle's parents returned to Greeley to put their daughter to rest in her hometown. For them, uncovering Janelle's remains meant that their daughter had been dead for the entirety of the 35 years that they had hoped endlessly to eventually bring her home. Despite this discovery, it did not provide them with any answers as to what actually happened to Janelle just days before Christmas in 1984. On September 13, 2019, investigators from Greeley Police Department publicly announced that they had a person of interest in Janelle's abduction and subsequent murder. In fact, the suspect was none other but a man whom they had secretly had their eye on the entire time. Steve Pankey. Steve Pankey was not an average former Greeley resident. Rather, he was well known and influential. He had actually run for governor in Idaho in 2014 and 2018, and even ran for lieutenant governor in 2010. You might be wondering, what does a politician have to do with a 3-decade-old cold case? The answer is sure to shock you. Pankey was first associated with the land where Janelle's remains were found, though he later denied any connection and instead claimed that the police began investigating him out of dislike. He said, "I don't think they have a really good suspect, and I'm somebody they don't like, so I think that's it." His home in Twin Falls was searched under a warrant on behalf of Greeley PD's assumption that he was directly responsible for the abduction and murder of Janelle Matthews. At the time of Janelle's initial kidnapping, Steve Pankey and his now ex-wife had lived just about 2 miles away from the Matthews home. After the police search of his house, Pankey said, 31 days ago they searched my house, took a whole bunch of stuff, and I'm still at home, so obviously in all my stuff they found nothing connecting me to it." It being Janelle's murder. Pankey even voluntarily agreed to give a DNA sample to the police, a choice that may prove critical later. At the time of Janelle's disappearance, Pankey had served as a youth pastor at the very same church that the Matthews family attended weekly. Upon